La jolie fille, le vilain garçon, le revolver, le gentil monsieur, la méchante femme.
Scénario de François Truffaut.
La mort, la petite américaine, le voleur d'auto, le concerto pour clarinette, la police.
Supervision de Claude Chabrol.
La pin-up, le romancier, la boniche, Humphrey Bogart, Marseille, mon ami Gaby, Picasso, le photographe italien, les anarchistes, le magnétophone.
Un film de Jean-Luc Godard.
La tendresse, l'aventure, le mensonge, l'amour, les Champs-Élysées, la peur.
Avec Gene Seberg et Jean-Paul Belmondo.
Le diable au corps, du rififi chez les hommes, et Dieu créa la femme.
Hi everybody, this is Philip Martin. This is On Film on Video for September 16th, 2022. I just showed you the original trailer for Jean-Luc Godard's Breathless, A Bout de Souffle from 1960. Because, as we all know, JL, he died. He's 91. I don't know exactly what he was. It was assisted suicide in Switzerland, where he's been living for the past few decades, kind of as a recluse. I don't really know how to approach this because, it's sort of like, oh, well, first of all, let's get the assisted suicide thing out of the way. I don't know what I think about that. I don't have any problem with someone, taking their own life if that's what they choose to do, and there are circumstances that merit it. I don't know what his circumstances were, except that he was 90 years old. I've heard he wasn't so much sick as tired, which kind of makes sense when you consider what we know of Godard, which, to be absolutely honest, really isn't that much. We can read about Godard. There's lots of scholarly stuff written about him. I'll be absolutely honest and say that I've hardly ever read anything scholarly about Godard. I've watched his movies, and some of them I like very much, like, Breathless in 1967's Weekend, and Masculine Feminine, and Alphaville, and Contempt, and Band of Outsiders. But I think it was like in 2006 or something, we went to the New York Film Festival, and there was a new Godard there, and I can't remember. I didn't look it up. I could look it up, but it doesn't really matter because he made lots of films, especially in the last 30 years. And Karen and I went to see this film at Lincoln Center, and we're sitting there in the audience with a crowded audience. It was packed theater. And we're watching it. And what it is basically a collage. It's a film with a lot of arresting images. Some images that Godard had taken from his own films, some that were, newsreel archival footage and stuff like that. And parts of it were interesting, but most of it was like, okay, this is like something a grad student would do. Stretched out to, I think 3 hours. Again, I'm telling you the story because I want, without going back and informing myself, because I want to give you the impression, don't hold me to any of the facts here. This is just my sort of, recollection of this thing. And I'm like sitting there, and Godard is a filmmaker I genuinely love. And Karen has not seen much Godard other than Breathless, and I kind of wanted to go to this. It's kind of like, let's go see the Godard. And, it's going on, and it's really sort of punishing. It's sort of anti-audience. It's a kind of movie. It's a kind of anti-movie, and he made a lot of those, especially in the last 30 years. And like I said, there's always moments you can pull out of that and that are, interesting, sort of redeeming, but you're not going to, show a lot. If you're going to show the best of Jean-Luc Godard, you're going to show what we think of as the French New Wave movies. And he's arguably the most important, not arguably, he's not my favorite French New Wave director. That would be Rene. But he is the most important and the most influential. It seems I've been talking about him a lot lately. And I'm reminded kind of when Paul Greenberg wrote about the genius comic Bill Hicks. And just out of the blue. Paul didn't really write a lot about stand-up comics, okay? And he wrote this really, really nice column that really got Bill Hicks. And it was like, it ran, and I think it ran the day he died. The day that Bill Hicks died of cancer. He was very, very young, in his 30s. And it was like, did Paul Greenberg kill Bill Hicks? Well, of course he didn't, but, it's sort of like... And, of course, I used Breathless this summer as sort of the focal point, the fulcrum around the films I showed. I had a little 4-week, film class that we showed down at Riverdale for the Life Quest group. And for the first film I showed Richard Lester's The Beatles film, A Hard Day's Night. And I wanted to show that first because I wanted to get people in the, I wanted to start them off on everybody loves that movie. I mean, it's a hard movie to resist. But then I wanted to go back and show them where that movie came from, so I showed them Breathless the next week. And it was sort of interesting because Breathless is a very enjoyable movie. But what you need to know about Breathless, the main thing you need to know about it is it's a movie that's really about movies. It's not about anything serious. It's a reaction in a way, because what happened that, this gang at Cahiers de Cinéma, the film critics, Godard's buddy, Francois Truffaut, he gets a chance to make a movie. The first movie of this group. And so he makes this wonderful film called The 400 Blows. It's heartfelt, deeply autobiographical. It's just lovely. And it's just, it's an emotional experience, and it is an authentic, you sense that it's authentically Truffaut. It's my movie. This is what I want to say. So Godard, he's up next. He gets a chance to make a movie. And as I imagine it, he looks at The 400 Blows, he goes, I'm not doing that. I'm not going to try to follow that way. So, everything you need to know about Breathless is really in that first scene where the punk in Marseille, the car thief in Marseille, steals the Oldsmobile from the American officer. The whole movie is a French punk hijacking an American vehicle and taking it on a joyride. Godard just jumps in to the American film noir gangster drama and just, drives it like a rental car. He's just having so much fun with this movie. So much of this stuff that is those jump cuts that make no sense, that don't do anything for the film except enervate you. They make you nervous, and it's like the firecrackers going off in Boogie Nights. That's what it's about. He's trying to mess with you. He is messing with you. He gets Gene Seberg and Jean Belmondo. I said it wrong, but anyway, he puts them in this room, and they're talking about absolutely nothing, silly stuff. And it sounds very French, and so you think it's profound, but it's not profound. It's very superficial. These two people are very petty people. They are awful people. They are not heroes. They are not the sort of people who normally are valorized on screen and put up there 40 feet high. You know? They're just superficial, kind of selfish, very selfish. Little people, little minds, little concerns, trying to emulate movie stars. It's really kind of they're pathetic. But he's making a myth about these pathetic people. He is really leaning in to this stuff. And it's one of the most enjoyable movies I've seen. And okay, so I show that movie, Breathless. And then I jump ahead to Bonnie and Clyde, Arthur Penn's Bonnie and Clyde, 1967, just a few years after Breathless. And it's a Hollywood movie. It's a Hollywood French New Wave movie is what Bonnie and Clyde is. In fact, I know they wanted Truffaut to direct it, and he wanted to do it like in Maine, in black and white. And I think they wanted Godard to do it too. And you could see the influence of Breathless on both Hard Day's Night and on Bonnie and Clyde. And if you look at Hard Day's Night, you can actually go back and look at a short film that Richard Lester made with Peter Sellers from 57 or something that sort of influences, Breathless. So it's all kind of playing together. And then for the end of the series, I went back and got Billy Wilder's Ace in the Hole from 1951 to show my class the sort of American B-movie, gangster / tabloid film, that really Godard was taking the piss out of, And looking back on it, it's really brilliant because, it's like Breathless is really this moment where everything changes. And that's what I was trying to do with this. It's like talk about moments when everything changes in cinema. And all of a sudden, somebody decides that the rules don't apply to them and they don't have to follow these rules, and so they don't, and then they come up with something like this. It's like, Godard was working with what Manny Farber would call termite art, which is this stuff that's, made for money. It's not made to instruct us morally or to be a great work of art. It's made to entertain people and that's the sort of movie that Wilder was making, only Wilder had more going on. I mean, and a lot of these guys really did. And the Cahiers de Cinema crowd, they caught on to that. They caught on to the fact that the best American movies were these B movies, so-called B movies, and that the lumbering white elephant movies like Gone with the Wind, and, you could probably put some of the Douglas Sirk stuff in there too, were not necessarily the best that the country was produced. It was not necessarily the best art. The best art was in these gritty, kind of fly-by-night, poverty row movies. Okay. So Godard decides to take that movie, that kind of movie, and make his kind of movie. And his kind of movie is very informed, very intelligent, intelligently designed, very intelligently designed, but it is about itself. It's about making its meta, okay? It's one of those really modern kind of moments. It's like, oh, you can do this. You can be self-referential. You can, put movie posters up in the background that are commenting on the movie that's going on here. And you can have this, lead character who is pretending to be a movie star when he's really not he's not Humphrey Bogart, and he's really doesn't have much going on, and yet he's got the style. And his style will influence others, and other people will make him an icon. So, and it's playing that game, which is really interesting when you start thinking about it. I think of Godard as the first punk because he's subversive, but he's still aware of what he's doing, but he's not trying to write the great American novel or make this great film epic. He's trying to have fun. He's on a joyride. That's what you need to know. Now, as you go along, it's like a band, what is it? What's the American, the English Band United? I can't think of that. A Band of Outsiders, that's what it is. And if you go to Band of Outsiders, it's the same kind of thing. And then you get into, masculine and feminine is a little bit more... And then with Weekend, you have him announcing the end of cinema at the end of that, which he doesn't mean. He's always in this conversation with other filmmakers and with the work of other filmmakers and the medium and the whole notion idea of cinema. Some people lose him. At some point, you will lose him unless, I don't know, maybe you don't. Maybe there are some people who I think have kept up with Godard, but not me. I lose Godard about Weekend. And some of the stuff that he does later, I really like, but I can't tell you exactly what he's thinking, and maybe it shouldn't matter. I think it shouldn't matter, but it does matter. I think it shouldn't matter because dreams don't necessarily make sense, but they're important. Movies don't necessarily need to make sense to be important. Okay. And then you've got the great quotes. All you need to make a movie is a girl and a gun. Cinema is truth at 24 frames per second. Yes, that's not true at all. A story should have a beginning, a middle, and an end, though not necessarily in that order. I like that one. And the one that's really kind of interesting, he who jumps into the void owes no explanation to those who stand and watch, which is Godard's sort of Teddy Roosevelt Man in the Arena speech, where he's saying, hey, I'm brave and intrepid and I'm going these places and doing these things, and who are you who just sit there behind your typewriters to judge me? And it's self-serving, but that's what all art is. All art is ultimately self-serving because who else is the artist going to, authentically please? Sure, you can please the audience. You can pander to the audience. But, it's sort of like if you're not initially pleasing yourself, as Rick Nelson would have it, it really doesn't mean anything. It's sort of like, it's anybody can make a cynical movie that's designed to, curry favor with an audience and to be popular. Whether you can make a popular movie or not, that's another question. But you can decide to do that. Which is, kind of like when I go back and, again, I don't want to make too much of this, but I wrote about it and I said it. And when I was writing about Jordan Mears' New West, I said that, it reminds me a little bit of Breathless because they're just going, hey, we can do what we want. And we're doing what we want because we've, this is our aesthetic. It may not, and it may be a little lazy. It may be a little, lewd. It may be a little bit impolite. It's certainly not disciplined, and it should be more disciplined. We know that. But you gotta do it at some point. And that's what Godard was all about, was doing it. He was constantly doing it. Constantly, which is why he produced so many movies. Anyway, I don't know how we should react to this because, sort of like, I don't want to be... Yeah, 90 is a good run. 91's a good run. A career like Jean-Luc Godard's deserves to be celebrated. We don't need to mourn the fact that the guy is gone. When I heard the news, actually I heard the news before this, but the day, like 5:30 in the morning, the day we found out that he was dead, a friend of mine sent me a message and goes, "Are you going to write about Jean-Luc Godard?" And I sent him back a message and I said, "Well, I imagine that Starfleet will, accord him all the due honors." Dumb joke. Bad joke. Maybe. I kind of like this joke. Maybe it's not a bad joke. He laughed, or he sent back, ha, 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 But I think that's kind of the spirit in which we should take this stuff. I mean, it's sort of like, Jean-Luc Godard is dead. Let's make a little joke about it, because that's what he would do. Jean-Luc Godard. Jean-Luc Picard. You got that, though, didn't you? Anyway, what else? Well, the only other thing I wanted to say is that, speaking of my class, I'm doing another one in the winter after January, after the first of the year. I can't do it in the fall. Too busy. Don't want to do it all the time. But I'm thinking about doing the Mike White television series. You see that? No, you can't. The White Lotus, which just came out on DVD. I think it comes out on the 19th. I think that's... Yeah. We were going to have it in our home movies column this week, but the home movies has either been really cut short because we got a lot of stuff in this week's section, or it's been totally eliminated this week because that's the first thing that comes out when we have too much stuff, usually. So I just wanted to mention that, and maybe we'll write more about it later. But it's a great show. I really was impressed. I'm a big Mike White fan. I also wanted to do a class on his Enlightened a few years ago, but we couldn't figure out how to do it over Zoom. It just doesn't work over Zoom. So if I'm in a classroom, I may do this. Now, don't hold me to that. I may do something else. If I do something else, I found something I want to do more and that I think will be more fun for everybody. But until then, this is what I'm thinking about. Mike White's White Lotus, HBO, out on DVD this week, or the 19th. I think the 19th. So, take care. We'll talk to you soon. Hey, sip a glass of wine for Jean-Luc Picard.